Good morning to all, and thanks for joining me in this session. It is my great pleasure to share with you some of the perspectives from the adult educators about their experience during the COVID-19 pandemic. We did an online survey in May and June this year. It was the circuit breaker in Singapore, or lockdown period in Singapore, where all the learning, training, assessment related work are moved online. This survey was jointly conducted by our Institute for Adult Learning and the University of Bristol. We were very lucky. We got very good responses and support from the community, and received about 1,500 valid responses. And in this survey, our main focus is to capture how adult educators think about this moving all learning, teaching, assessment, and training related work online, and try to understand the challenges or changes that they have been made, as well as its impact on the future of education and training. The educators responded to our survey included academics and adjuncts working in the Institutes of Higher Learning, or IHLs in short, including those polytechnics, institutes of technical education, and autonomous universities. About 36%, or 600 of them, came from the IHLs. The majority of the adult educators work in private training organizations and perform the roles of facilitators, assessors, courseware developers, consultants, and freelancers working in those organizations, as well as the training professionals working in the enterprise delivering and in-house training were also participated in this survey. The general view from the respondents are that adult learning and higher education are going to be more digital. We can see from this chart that the use of online platforms for teaching and training increased drastically during this period. The proportion of people reported frequent use of online platforms jumped from 14% pre-COVID to 63% during the COVID-19 period. It increased more than 4 times. And about 71% of the respondents agreed that online learning will be the future of higher education, adult training, and lifelong learning. In this quote, we can see online education and training is seen to provide enhanced accessibility for learners. Paradoxically, at a time where traditional forms of access are denied by the lockdown and social distancing rules, the digital education and training will likely to lead to an anticipated proliferation of online universities, and the advantage of this digitalization to open learning are seen in terms of both financial savings to learners and job opportunities or market opportunities for the educators and the educational institutions. However, majority of our respondents felt that learning online exclusively will negatively impact learning outcomes and the learner's well-being. We can see here, especially the negative impact are related to the social health. So about 64% of them think that learning online exclusively may damage the social health, learners' abilities to interact socially, or to build trusty relationship with their peers and the teachers in a healthy way. One particular concern was related to assessment. About 48% of them felt that online learning will negatively impact on assessment. And one frequently mentioned issue is authenticity. It is difficult to ensure that the person undertaking the assessment is the one signed up for the course. We also heard from the keynote speaker and some panel speakers yesterday that it might be easier to cheat in an online environment than in a physical classroom. And currently, this integrity check is mainly done manually. Respondents, on the other hand, felt that about 80% of them felt that learning and training online will help learners develop digital skills by using it more frequently. And about 60% of them think that this online migration is actually mirroring the work-based conditions faced by learners within the digital economy. Like mentioned in this quote, it reflects the kind of working environment that the learners will go into once they graduate, therefore provide kind of preparation or even more seamless transition to the labor market participation in the context of a more globalized workforce. But the transition is never easy. Adult educators faced many challenges and made adjustments to ensure that the desired learning outcomes still be achieved. Among the 1,800 quotes we received for the open-ended question in relation to challenges, here are the top 5 mentioned challenges. About 400 of the quotes mentioned issues related to internet connectivity and reliability, as well as access to tech tools. Another issue is the lack of digital skills for both learners and educators. They also mentioned the loss of social interaction with their learners, colleagues, and professional community. So, reduce the networking opportunities with them. And another frequently mentioned challenge is about engaging learners effectively online. It is difficult to know whether the learners are paying attention. Learners may log in but disappear behind the screen, and there may be some resistance to move online from both educators and learners. So some kind of mindset change are required. I remember one of the respondents mentioned that if we all stop thinking that life will go back to as it was before and that this situation is not temporary, then we think we will be more willing to move to online learning. Despite of all these challenges, our adult educators are quick enough to adjust their teaching and training to support learning. For example, many of our educators spend extra time converting the content to e-mode and providing a blend of asynchronous and synchronous learning materials. They also cut down the duration and adopt this micro-learning. And many of them use multiple modes, like using text, videos, and they also use many games and to engage the learners. Making online learning more interactive and engaging seems to be a must to keep the attention of the learners. And we can see some of them use breakout sessions to allow peer or small group discussion. And they also use chat box, Kahoot, for example, to get the learners engaged in the learning. And also, some of them mentioned the change in assessment using new rubrics and adding in more assessment points for formative assessment and allow video submission. So what they do is previously, normally they will have one summative assessment at the end, but now they actually chunk it into different and adding more points for them adding more assessments during the course, so that each assessment, the learners will not be so pressured to think that actually the learning and the outcome will be graded at one summative assessment. So this actually, many of the learners and educators think that their learners feel less stressed. They also use online MCQ quizzes, and also, like I mentioned, using some gamification platforms or tools to make it more fun. A few other, not a few, actually quite many of the educators provided additional support for the learners in need, and also by providing extra coding, and a few also provided technical support to help learners navigate the online platforms and tools. And of course, technological improvements is another area. Many of the educators mentioned they subscribed to new learning apps and upgraded the tech tools, and also bought new headsets and web cameras or additional monitors to support the online facilitation. In terms of support needed, more than half of our respondents think that they need to significantly improve their knowledge and skills in online delivery to remain employable in higher education and adult training, particularly in areas related to the use of learning technology, online facilitation, the design development for online learning and assessment. Moving forward, we think for many of our respondents, a digital revolution for education, so long in the making and so long resisted, has finally arrived and with permanent effect. The permanence of this shift is articulated very clearly in terms of cost affordances, but also that there is generally no negative impact on effectiveness of such provision. Of course, there are still rooms for improvement. For example, online assessment is still a concern and it requires further improvement. There are going to be long-term impact on the jobs and skills for people working in the higher education and adult learning sectors. Respondents caution that those who fail to make the necessary digital leap will be those left behind. This is true for both educators and educational institutions. And for many of our respondents, COVID-19 is seen to present an opportunity for paradigm change, which educators and institutions should grasp. They think that this emergency change shift to online learning is a positive interruption and turning away point from traditional methods. They describe this COVID-19 as providing an opportunity for pedagogical experimentation and professional growth among the educators. An increased investment in digital capacity building among teacher trainees, as well as professional development of the existing adult educators, is also linked to concerns that increased popularity for digital learning will stimulate numbers of online educational trainers and therefore necessitates the increased performance evaluation and regulatory mechanisms. Looking ahead, we see huge potential of online learning for adult learning. We understand and we've heard during yesterday and this morning that online learning, e-learning provide accessibility to a diverse range of learners and with wider range of courses. And also it lowered the barriers to learning, potentially making learning education more affordable. Of course, we know the flexibility that online learning provides. It also has the potential for more personalized learning, like what Prof. King just shared during the keynote, that using AI and other technology help us to provide more personalized learning to our learners, and also helping adult learners especially to juggle between work and life. But there are also areas we need to improve further. One such challenge is credentialing. We think recognition of prior learning is more than recognizing participation in formal programs, but need to think of ways to bridge gaps between formal, non-formal, and informal learning. And also how to recognize the macro credentials, the digital badges that learners gain across different platforms, and then build them into qualification skills frameworks. And more importantly, how how to get employers recognize and accept the quality of such learning. Assessments also needs to be enhanced and integrated, and to integrate both knowledge and practice and show that learning really improves performance in practice. So for the TAE, for the training and adult education business, with the move to online, we see the opportunities to bring our local offerings overseas. Of course, at the same time, we're inviting competitors, and we can also think them as partners from overseas. Education is going to be more global for sure. And we are heartened to see many of our IHLs and training organizations are seeing opportunities in taking advantage of this transition to extend their services to wider audiences globally. And we think that probably one possible way forward is to extend online offering globally and at the same time act locally with the physical community, therefore a more blended mode. We hope that this sharing could be of some food for thoughts to help us adapt to the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen, for this insightful presentation. We now have time for Q&A. So you are welcome to raise your hand and speak, or you can type your questions in the chat box. Priority will be given to participants who speak. So are there any questions for Dr. Chen? Yeah, there's one from Hongyan Chen, and his question is, what are the features which adult learning unique have?
This is a very good question, and also a question that I think many of us do not have the definite answers yet. But I think there are a few ways that adult learners or adult learning might be unique from the schooling and pre-employment learning. One thing is that the learner profile is different. Our adult learners, for many of them, they bring in previous learning experience, working experience. Some of them have quite experienced in the domain area, and so to us, we think one difference is while teaching in pre-schooling, the knowledge co-creation probably is more prominent or more obvious for those among those adult learners and their educators. Another way is adults may learn differently. And we had a few discussions with neurosciences. We think that adult learning needs needs to be a science of itself. So we have organized a symposium and to discuss the future about adult learning. And one thing is that adult learning actually is quite multidisciplinary. It is going to be very powerful if we combine the learning theories and together with practice, because many of the learning happens at workplace, not in traditional classrooms. And also how the neurons or the systems work. I mean, how our brain work, brain of adult learners and the brain of younger learners, they work quite differently according to the neuroscientists. And also another thing is how AI and computational science can help adult learning to support learning in a way that provides more personalized learning and the wider accessibility.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it's time for the next presentation.
Sure.
Yeah. So.